Well folks, as the news regarding Halo Infinite seems to just remain bleaker than most of us want, I think it's a good time for us to tuck into a good old-fashioned Ascent Hyperion video where I pick one very simple, seemingly innocuous element of Halo's gameplay and overanalyze it to galaxy brain levels. So in today's video, I'm going to explain how the implementation of weapon pads in Halo Infinite represents the end of an era in Halo, brought on as an accidental casualty of modern gaming. I'm the home slice, Ascend Hype. Hyperion. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, take a second to do so now, and make sure you wipe the grime off your keyboard because like always, I have a viewer question for you at the end of the video. Let's hear from today's sponsor before we pull this topic off the pad. Today's video is sponsored by Vite Ramen. When you're playing Halo, you have a million decisions to make. Should you push camo or rockets? Should you actually play the objective? Should you spend $12 on cosmetics? Well, today's sponsor makes an important decision about your nutrition very simple for you. This is Vite Ramen, the healthy alternative to generic instant ramen, and its unique formula and contents make sure it comes packed with anywhere up to a quarter or to a third of your daily recommended intake of essential things like vitamin A, zinc, and iron, and more. To top it all off, Vite Ramen is a product produced by long-term Halo fans and is produced on sustainable means on real living wages. So the only real thing left for you to do is click my link in the description below so you can get exclusive access to my Vite Ramen bundle and discount. It's the best way to get your hands on Vite Ramen and some extra goodies too, so don't wait. Click my link and pick up your order of Vite Ramen today. Weapon pads are a fairly new yet not so new addition to the Halo gameplay experience. First being introduced in 2015's Halo 5, weapon pads in the simplest sense are stationary locations that produce weapons and power-ups on set timers, and that spawning of items is directly displayed on the player's HUD and via audio cues. The primary purpose of weapon pads in Halo 5, at least, was to give players equal functional awareness of the status of power items in a match, as the principle of equal starts and equal access are fundamental to the Halo gameplay experience. It's even worth reasoning that in matchups where players are generically equally skilled, the ability to control and use power items is what will define the winning team. Now, despite 343's best intentions for weapon pads being something to improve the general player experience, some fans were very unhappy with the implementation of weapon pads and claimed that by spoon-feeding players information of power item spawns, the skill required to properly time weapon pads mentally had been removed from the equation. This is an argument with some partial merit, as I do agree you could consider counting to 90 seconds a skill. But one thing players forget is that timing spawns like this is often a team tactic, and if you're playing matchmaking, 9.9 times out of 10, you're not on active comms with your random teammates. So if Halo X Skull X Hunter 69 pulls rockets at 1340, I don't notice the pull till even 10 seconds later, I'm now off my count even if I do it right. The other component to weapon pads is making sure all players understand where things are located on the map, as a means to lower the initial bar required to perform well, especially by new players. The same people who think automatic weapon timing is bad have the same negative feelings for the weapon locations on the HUD. Without spending too much time on arguments that were most relevant nearly 7 years ago, the general question anyone could ask is, if players disliked pads just for power weapons, why then would 343 place all weapons and items on pads in Halo Infinite? Well, the answer comes in several parts, but in many ways, it's for some of the same reasons Halo 5 did it, to lower the initial barrier for entry new players face when playing Halo, by making information regarding not just power weapons, but all weapons universally conveyed. 343 eliminates one of the player's abilities to succeed solely based on the time spent playing the same map over and over. But this is a little more important in Infinite because unlike Halo 5, or really any Halo before it, the weapon sandbox demands that players trade their starting weapons out or up more often, as Infinite does not have a strong starting weapon meta in contrast to previous titles like Halo 5 or Halo 3. But beyond the simple examples of what basically measures to handholding, weapon pads in Halo Infinite are used to inject some experiential diversity into maps by changing the weapon palette per match. As you've noticed, what a certain weapon pad in Infinite produces will change from match to match, mostly according to what game type is selected. So where in one instance you could grab Mangler off a pad, you can now grab a plasma pistol, for example. From my perspective, this is one of the more interesting functional changes made in Halo Infinite, and one I think players under-evaluate. It's not revolutionary per se, but it does lend itself towards being a better acknowledgement of Halo's emphasis on weapon sandbox variety, and how diversification of weapons in play diversifies the literal match experience. Unfortunately, Halo Infinite's weapon pool is a little meek compared to its prequel title Halo 5, so even with the ability to diversify weapon spawns, after the last 6 or so months of this game being out, even the randomized spawns have begun to feel repetitive, as there's only so many combos preloaded into each map and mode. But the reason for the takeover weapon pads goes further than just that, and this next reason is one I think is related to the unforeseen consequences of the improvements to modern gaming. Weapon pads are yet another way 343 is trying to retain Halo's history of high weapon visibility within the play space. To understand that, you need to bear with me for a second. See here Halo CE. In front of me is very obviously a sniper rifle, laid out like a big black line on this flat gray surface. Now, fast forward to 2022, and here's a sniper laying on the ground. Even if it's by fractions, due to the increase in visual details in games, it's become harder for weapons to be delineated on simple surfaces like in the days of old. And one key design challenge that has to be addressed is how Halo maintains its trend of having weapons exist as tangible and obvious items in the play space. For some players, this sniper might not be hard to see, but in the heat of the action, as you rail your third Adderall trying to keep up with the accelerated pace of FPS shooters today, every split second of decision making counts, and this sniper getting lost in the details of the map is a detriment to you. In 2014, 343 introduced weapon outlines in H2A as a way to address this issue in what I consider a mostly successful manner, to the effect that yes, it makes weapons stand out, and Halo 5 continued that trend. Halo Infinite brings it back as well, but goes one step further into overkill and takes spawned weapons off the ground entirely, making sure their location and placement is undisturbed and unmistakable. Now, by my critique, this is a very rigid, slightly soulless way to do so, however, and there's no real objective backing to that. The choice to lay the Hydra on the floor or the wall is arbitrary, and both deliver the same end result, but I would personally assert that there was a certain simple charm about how weapons once existed as props in the play space that was Halo's subtle aesthetic. And the use of weapon pads to mechanically dispense weapons from the same precast metal box each time robs that charm away. But I will contest, in spite of myself, it's simple and effective. It removes mistakes and increases player knowledge base the quickest way consistently. It's for those reasons that weapon pads have gone the extra mile in Halo Infinite. Even in the face of player blowback, the use of weapon pads is a mechanically simple and consistent way to lower the barrier of entry for play, all while combating the challenges of delineating weapons as interactable items in the play space. And it allows those things while also allowing maps to have their per match weapon deliveries effectively randomized, making better and more full use of the sandbox, even if that sandbox is a little skinny around the ribs right now. For me, it's one of those classic design choices with no-brainer pros and cons. And like most things, I don't feel there is an objective right or wrong. That being said, when Forge comes out and I finally get to craft my own play spaces, you can bet I'll be laying my toys on the ground like the old days. For today's viewer question, I just want you to share your take. Do you think the full takeover weapon pads was necessary to achieve greater player information delivery, or is it overkill in the name of balancing play? Hey, leave your thoughts in the comments below. That's going to do it for this video. Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not already, and follow me on Twitter and on Instagram, both linked below. You can continue discussion in my Discord, also linked below, and until next time, I'll catch y'all later.